All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving into a fascinating explainer that unpacks a really provocative premise currently buzzing around the watch community. We're looking at a brilliant exercise in, well, minimalism and strategy. Instead of those endless watch boxes and ever-expanding collections we see everywhere, we're exploring a thought experiment that forces us to critically evaluate what we actually value when we strap something to our wrists. 3. We're starting with this magic number, which immediately establishes a hard, non-negotiable limit on our choices. Not 5, not 10, and definitely not a whole drawer full of options you're eventually just going to forget about anyway, right? Just 3. And when you really think about the implications of that limitation, it completely changes how you shop. If you only have 3 slots to fill, you simply cannot afford to be redundant. You might need one for everyday wear, one for formal occasions, and maybe one for weekends or heavy sports. The number 3 demands that every single choice carries its own weight and fulfills a very specific, distinct role in your rotation.
And then boom, we hit the financial boundary, 1,000. Now in the world of horology, $1,000 is a really fascinating intersection. It's this kind of awkward middle ground where, yes, you have enough money to demand high-quality construction, reliable movements, and great design, but it is absolutely not enough to just throw cash at top luxury brands to solve the problem for you. You can't just buy your way out of this with an endless budget. You've got to be smart, you have to actively hunt for value, and you really need to know what makes a timepiece genuinely well-made versus what is just, clever marketing.
So this brings us to the exact source text we're exploring today. It's a seemingly simple 13-word challenge that totally forces us to rethink how we measure value in a timepiece. It reads, "The best 3-watch collection you can buy for under $1,000. Now read that carefully. It doesn't say a good collection, or some watches you might kinda like. It sets up a strict objective standard, the absolute best, within a highly subjective hobby, bound by rigid numeric and financial constraints. It's a really bold statement, and unpacking the logic behind it is exactly what we're going to do right now.
Okay, part 1, the rule of 3, limiting quantity.
So a 3-watch collection isn't just a small box, it's a strategic framework that breeds intentionality. It means you absolutely must cover all the bases of your lifestyle without any overlapping. Basically, you're forced into ruthless curation. For example, say you lock in a big, bulky Seiko diver for slot 1. Well, your next 2 slots absolutely have to compensate for the situations where that heavy dive watch simply won't work, like, trying to slip it under a dress shirt cuff. It maximizes versatility because every single watch has to punch way above its weight class. Constraint breeds creativity. By capping the collection at exactly 3, every single slot becomes incredibly precious. Think about it. In a world of infinite choices, picking a watch can actually be totally paralyzing. But when you apply a strict constraint, your brain has to work harder. You stop looking at what you could buy, and you laser focus on what you must buy to make the rotation function perfectly as a whole. You transition from being just a consumer into being a meticulous editor of your own personal style. So I really want you to ask yourself if you agree with this premise. Does having fewer options actually make each choice more meaningful? Have you ever noticed that people with massive collections often just end up wearing the exact same piece every single day anyway? By stripping away the excess, the 3 watches you do select become deeply integrated into your life. They aren't just objects sitting in a safe collecting dust, they become actual companions to your daily routine, and they gain meaning through constant, intentional use. Moving on to part 2, the $1,000 limit, the ultimate test. A hard cap of under $1,000 for the entire collection is where the theoretical meets the deeply practical. And remember, this isn't $1,000 per watch. This is $1,000 total, all in, for the complete trio. Sure, mathematically, that averages out to about $333 per watch if you divide it evenly. But let's be real, that is rarely how it plays out in reality. You might spend, say, $600 on your primary everyday mechanical watch, which leaves you at just $400 to secure both a reliable sports watch and an elegant dress watch. It requires extreme resourcefulness and, honestly, a bit of mathematical gymnastics. Navigating this whole thing basically requires 2 steps. Step 1, just accept the math. You cannot cheat the ceiling. Step 2 is ruthless evaluation. At this specific price point, you aren't paying for a brand name. You are hunting for scratch-resistant sapphire crystals, reliable workhorse movements, and immaculate dial finishing. You've got to weigh durability and style against every single dollar you spend, ensuring there is absolutely zero wasted capital across the board. To stretch that $1,000 to cover 3 distinct bases, you have to be highly resourceful. The text basically frames the budget as a monster you have to defeat. This means navigating the secondary market, hunting down micro brands that offer incredible specs for the price, or relying on affordable heritage pieces that have stood the test of time. I mean, think about it. Grab a nearly indestructible Casio G-Shock for your beater, a sleek Orient Bambino for the dress slot, and suddenly you spend under $300 and you still have over $700 left to find that perfect everyday core piece.
And finally, part 3, defining the absolute best and bridging the gap.
This comparison right here highlights why the exact phrasing of the text is so absolutely critical. We aren't just talking about buying watches. We're talking about achieving perfection within a heavily restricted box. Any collection is easy. You just buy things you kind of like over a decade and throw them in a box. There's no structure. But the best collection, that implies harmony. It implies that watch A perfectly complements watch B, and watch C fills the exact gap left by the other two, all while keeping the bank account safely under that $1,000 wire. It literally transforms the hobby into a deliberate art form.
When we look at these variables, synthesizing them requires bridging a massive gap. You've got the best as your qualitative goal, the 3-watch collection as your structural framework, and under $1,000 as your strict financial boundary. Nailing the exact center of this conceptual Venn diagram requires an immense amount of knowledge about what's actually available on the market, as well as an intimate understanding of your own wardrobe and daily lifestyle.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away from our explainer today. I'm challenging you to personally solve this brilliant horological puzzle. Because while the source text poses the challenge, the answer is ultimately going to be totally unique to you. How would you allocate those funds? Would you go super heavy on a diver and save a bunch on a digital beater, or balance it out evenly across a sports, dress, and everyday field piece? Take this framework, apply these constraints to your own tastes, and just see what you come up with. It's a literal masterclass in understanding value. Thank you so much for joining me to deconstruct this, and I highly encourage you to go build your own brilliant trio in your mind today.